Hi, everyone. Welcome, everyone, to our panel today, where we answer the question, what do today's supply chains actually need? I am Anzar Kamdar, the Chief Decision Scientist at Throughput. Our goal with this panel will be to provide a reality check to all the technology and AI hype. Our focus will be on what actually works rather than what doesn't with deployment of AI technologies and how to make it work with proven use cases and actual business and financial outcomes. The panel is an Ask Me or Ask Us Anything format, so we welcome all your live comments and questions that I can direct to the speakers. Before we jump in, let me introduce our esteemed speakers. We have Subhash Chaudhry, CEO of PhiChains, formerly Chief Architect at Apple. He has pioneered, designed, and deployed many technologies that are in use across the world today. Some of these technologies I had only heard about for the last 5 years, but he's been working on them for decades. An example would be the financial supply chain management technology utilized at Dell. We have Randy McClure. He's a supply chain technology analyst with extensive experience that includes the US Army, third-party logistics, and FedEx. He has a proven track record of innovative software solutions and delivering shipment analytics to thousands of organizations. As the host of sctechinsights.com, Randy provides an unbiased analysis and insights on supply chain technology and its applications. We have Ali Reza, who has a master's in chemical engineering from the University of Pennsylvania. He's worked in the lab, in the field, and in executive positions in the pharmaceutical and energy sectors. He's worked in sales, marketing, supply chain, procurement, manufacturing, and operations. He's lived through many supply chain disruptions. An example would be evacuating operations from Middle East war zones. Ali is also the founder of Throughput.ai, where we have spoken to about 3,000 industrial organizations globally. We've worked with approximately 100 companies on industrial and supply chain AI deployments. So, as mentioned, all of our speakers are well-versed and very fluent in physical information and financial supply chains. And they've been both end users and strategic leaders in these areas. So let's get started. Ali, maybe I'll direct it to you. How about we talk about the reality of where AI today is in October 2025?
Yeah, thanks, Anzar. Maybe before we do that, quick introduction as yourself, as the host of this panel.
Yep. Hi, everyone. Anzar, as I mentioned, I'm the Chief Decision Scientist at Throughput, previously a mechanical engineer, worked in construction, served as a director for a company of 2,000 employees, supply chain management master's out of MIT, worked at DHL. Nice to meet you all.
Thanks, Anzar. And just to answer your question, just early days, still working with some of the data that's available. I would hate to say not much has changed since my time in energy, but 15 years on, I think we're still some of the same classical problems, now being a little bit more data enabled, doing them at scale. Over.
Great to know. Subhash, your perspective on where we are with supply chains and AI adoption?
Like I was saying before, there's never a dull moment in supply chains, and AI is making it more and more exciting. But before I forget, I'd like to do a shout out to all the supply chain heroes who keep the supply chains working 24/7, rain or shine, right? Listen to all the complaints, and just to keep us living happily. So a shout out to all the supply chain heroes who make this happen. So about AI, yeah, there's a lot of talk. I mean, there's no escaping it. You can't hide from it. There's reality, and everything that I'm going to say in this panel is going to be I'm making a clear distinction between AI and Gen AI. It's very easy to get those two confused. So AI is definitely in place. It has been in place for a very long time, and it's going to change the entire information supply chain. Okay, so we'll talk about the various supply chains a little later, but that's my view is that AI is going to make a drastic impact on every working stage of our business.
Randy, you've been in this space for decades as far as the information supply chain and AI. What do you see?
I has been around a while, but now that we've got such fast computers, cheap storage, fast networks, there's unbelievable what we can do with AI now. So supply chains, we're a little bit behind. And it's, that's what we need to focus on. Why doesn't this stuff work box? And to me, the focus is a lot on data. We need to overcome some of our data issues with interoperability. I mean, data, uh, even coming up with business terms. What does ship mean? It means a lot of different things from different people. So, I think that's what we got to work on, and and I'm ready to get going.
Sounds good. How about removing AI and technology? What do supply chains actually need today? What are the problems that we're looking to solve? What's the main focus? Subhash.
Okay, so we use this word supply chains, I think, very loosely. So for me, very clearly, supply chain is not one thing. There are three things. Okay, there is the physical supply chain, which is generally what everybody means when they say supply chain. But there's actually an information supply chain, and then there's a financial supply chain. Okay, AI belongs in the information supply chain segment. Okay, it's not the physical supply chain, it's not the money part, it is the technology that is used to drive both physical and financial. Financial is what drives, actually pays for all this stuff. So that's the important part, to understand that a physical exists to support the outcomes, the financial outcomes defined in the financial supply chain. The IT, the technology, AI, there is a purpose for it. It gets funded and paid for so that it supports the financial outcomes that you want. So you need to understand these three very clearly, because three different languages are spoken in that. Just clubbing them into one doesn't really solve the problem, and usually causes a lot of confusion. So speaking physical, information, and financial, completely different languages. So once you understand that, then you can apply AI appropriately for the right domain.
Sounds good. Ali, maybe a question to you, branching off this. We know that there's significant investment into AI and the information supply chain from the financial supply chain, yet the results don't often translate to better business outcomes, which is, financial, or better operations from a physical perspective. What are you seeing?
Yeah, I think what was true 10, 15 years ago is true today. There's not a lot of involvement from operations end users. I've been an end user, right? And there's still a lot of education required to understand what this new tool can do in terms of things like inventory optimization, cutting waste, all the things that a business would do anyways using spreadsheets, but looking to do it at scale and organizations. I still feel there's a lot of human in the loop. These days, I spend a lot of time just being that human in the loop. So there's just a lot of coaching with this new tool to say, hey, this is how you used to do things. This is how this new tool thinks about it. And the heuristics and stuff are not clear. So I think from a financial perspective, it's being sold overhyped to an extent, right, of what it can do. But when you really start looking at the ROI and asking, hey, how much more output we had, how much more readiness, how much more sales, how much more inventory can we recirculate? That's when the rubber hits the roads, and that's where a lot of the ROI just often falls orders of magnitude of what is expected. So it's not very clear going in what you're going to get with the big investments that are being made today into the enterprise, especially on the IT side.
Randy, maybe a question to you. With all this investment into the information supply chain and the IT infrastructure, you mentioned data, but what I've seen is that the data is quite often removed from actual decision making, whether at the executive or the frontline operations level. What's the missing link here?
Well, I think I think most people are familiar with business reporting, and they're both our enterprise systems. You've got a data mart, descriptive. It describes what's going on, and then we're hearing a lot about the AI planning, predictors. What's going to go on in the future. I've done a lot in the post analysis, where you're diagnosing root causes. What we really need to do is get more of the AI on the prescriptive side, and really all this needs to flow together. Right now it's so compartmentalized, and it needs to flow together. You got to start with some good data. Start with good data. If all you're going to do is work with the current data chaos, you're going to get AI chaos.
You're essentially going to accelerate the bad processes around it as well. So maybe another thought here, Randy, and this is just based on my own experience. Most of these technologies and AI being sold into these organizations, the heavy investment that they're doing on their teams as far as just getting the right talent on board. From what I've seen, it typically remains under the IT purview. And you mentioned there that it has to be cross-functional. More often than not, most of these technologies just end up in the innovation groups or the analytics groups, and rarely make it down to the operations level, as Ollie mentioned. And eventually everyone just defaults back to Excel. It's familiar. Subhash, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, a lot of times AI gets some, or IT department AI, and the CIO's looking around, okay, and he brings in vendors and keeps on slapping stuff against the wall. What we need from the business is some definitions, outcomes. You really don't need to tell IT how. Just tell them what the outcome is, and they'll, how much it's going to cost, how long it's going to, and but that's what we need the business, and we need a business analyst in there and the data, because the data, the IT guys, you don't want to turn them into business analysts, but supply chains.
Actually, Randy, I mean, you brought up two hot topics that I'm very passionate about. One is the data part, right? And then why, if you notice, I didn't call it IT, I called it information supply chain. And you also said a very key thing. In supply chains, we depend on outcomes, right? We measure things based on what outcome it achieved. So whether financial outcome, satisfaction, all those things. But IT, we don't have those measures, right? So there's this whole AI stack that's going to go into the industry that is going to change how IT is going to be measured in supply chain terms of information supply chains and what outcome did it achieve for the business. That is the trend that is happening. And so now going back to data. So there's one very clear problem with data, right? About 30 years ago, this whole data problem was being addressed with MDM when we introduced data warehousing into the world. So here's the problem with that, right? For 30 years, we haven't solved it. So do you want to say the same argument was used to justify data warehousing? Do you want to invest more money to fix bad data that is stored in legacy systems, right? Without spending money on the future, which is AI, which cannot use that bad data. What's your option? I would submit that you want to spend your money on, investments wise, building the right data set without trying to fix the legacy data for legacy systems. That's one submission that I would make, right? And then the next thing is 80% of the work that we do today, because of the systems and processes that exist, are actually created by those legacy systems, right? 80% of the work you do, think about it. And then we just said ultimately what you do. It doesn't do what you want, you end up with spreadsheets, right? All that investment, all those billions of dollars, all the promises, and then finally you solve the problem with a spreadsheet, right? So how are you going to fix that? This is a window of opportunity to do that. You got a clean thought process, a clean source of data that AI agents require that doesn't exist there, right? So this is a clean window of opportunity and a short window of opportunity to do it right, right? Sure. Now, these systems were built for human beings, all the existing systems, visibility, all the investments we made with dashboards and all that stuff was for humans' consumption, so that humans got that insight and analytics to make a decision. And I would say that today we've crossed that inflection point where humans hallucinate more than Gen AI does. I would trust Gen AI answer more than a human's answer, especially in specific supply chains, right? Given the same data, I cannot expect two individuals in a supply chain to come to the same decision. Whereas with the AI technology that we invest, you can get that repeatable, scalable, and verifiable. I cannot verify it with a human being, right? You ask him second time, he might give you a different answer. But with the technology that you have, you should be able to do all three: repeatable, computable, and verifiable consistently. That's a whole potential capability that AI can deliver today with clean data. Obviously, you give it garbage, it's not going to work, right? So clean data. This is the opportunity, right? So it's a big, big, huge opportunity to change that entire stack of technologies that we have. Everything is open. Sorry.
Subhash, that's a great point because you mentioned agents. We had a conversation once about orchestration versus asynchronous. Can you
Oh, boy.
expand a bit more on that?
Okay, so yeah, this is another good point. So to me, when you look at it historically, orchestration is just another buzzword for control. Okay, real world supply chains work asynchronously, right? Especially in a global supply chain, you don't orchestrate it. I work 6 to 9 to do what I need to do. Somebody works from 9 to 12. Somebody's better at some other time. I work in finance. I work in China. I work in so I'm working all over the place in supply chains. I make decisions for what I have to do for my job. There's nobody orchestrating and saying, "Hey, you wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning. You should complete it." That is the wrong approach. Agents, as they're being developed, you notice in the last 1 year, the verbiage and terminology has changed to emphasis now on doing the work, not giving me insights. Okay, I want you to do the work. Even the travel agent example people use, I want you to do the booking versus give me 10 options, and then I'm back to square one. I have to research the 10 options again, right? So doing the work has become now the buzzword and thing. To do the work, and this is where one of the things that you mentioned, Randy, in your writings is the OODA loop: observe, orient, decide, and act, right? Agents can do that at digital speeds. Humans cannot. So that is what I mean by asynchronous, right? You can't orchestrate that. You can't say, wait. Let me tell you when to observe, when to orient, when to decide, and when to act, right? It's got to be done. So that's how the supply chains work across the globe. There's a problem in Malaysia, they have to deal with it. They do what they have to. China, there's a different thing. So that is the future, right? And that's how AI should be built, right? Not somebody orchestrating it. And we go back to that legacy controller. Well, we got to build a moat around the system because, if I'm going to get funded, what's your moat? Well, what are these moats and all that for? To get control, right? So I don't like the word orchestration for that reason. We should be able to be free to innovate and let these agents do the work, make decisions without somebody telling them what to do. Because that's the difficult part. Then you throttle the innovation. So that's my take on, don't do orchestration, do asynchronous support. That's how the world works, right?
Randy, maybe a question to you from here. We spoke about the need for clean data, as Subhash mentioned, to create these sort of systems. We've talked about what hasn't changed in so many years as far as just being able to leverage that data. And now we're talking about using data for not just information for human consumption, but actually to drive actions in the supply chain. Do you think the current model of supply chain technology providers, they're addressing this? We talked about bolt-on systems. We talked about successful organizations like Amazon that actually do have control of their data. What do you think?
For supply chains, we got a long way to go. I think we're having some success stories in computer vision, AI, but they're very isolated and locally. We're having success in I'm looking at knowledge graphs. Conversational AI. I like what's going on with conversational AI, where you get back in the LMs, because you can actually have business users actually querying the system. And again, it's in the early stages, but that way you can get IT out of it, and you can work with it directly. Decisions, which both Ali and Subhash have got systems. I really like what they're doing because They're working with the good data. They're not looking for a whole digital twin 2-year project to get all the data. Just work with the good data. Ali, with parts management, throughput, getting on time in full data, getting the purchase order data, and then with Sahish, we're getting the contract data. I mean, you get the facts, the procurement contract information. I mean, if the contract is in place, you've got that. There's amazing things you can do to to get answers, to get prescriptive, fast answers from this AI, and that's what we need is insights, and we got to do that with good data.
Thank you. Ollie, we spoke about all the organizations that we've spoken with. We've seen the ground realities of where the world is outside of what their marketing and innovation groups say. Who needs to be involved in being able to deploy these sort of solutions that we know exists? We've done it. Which groups in the organization need to be involved?
Yeah, it depends on a couple of things, right? So obviously IT data readiness. So even if you may have executive sponsorship or ownerships, say the owners or the CEO pushing it, if they don't have data ready to ingest to solve the problems that you want to solve, that's often a bottleneck, right? Typically, what I ask when we start any project is, what are we trying to solve? And what was I trying to solve 15 years ago, where this tool or a tool like this could have helped me execute at a larger scale than what I was doing at that scale already, right? And so what I've learned is obviously you need to be an operational end user to know the problems and live through them, to understand what you could have done with the spreadsheet and what you could have done with like a throughput.ai or an Anki or any other system for that matter. Obviously, finance needs to be involved, just because there needs to be enough budget initially, right? Often there's 1 to 2 years of conversation, sometimes 90 months in certain industries, where they're just talking about it, and where fundamentally people with the domain expertise and the operation expertise can be making more as consultants and actually selling some of these capabilities. The point is that there has to be enough budget to execute and have some of the people who are doing a little bit more risky stuff to do more scalable stuff available, right, from day one, not 6 to 9 months down the road. And from there needs to be a quick way to measure ROI. So the people who have to be involved, it's hard to say everyone, but ultimately, if you're looking for a transformation, it involves everyone. But it really does involve the operational end user that is responsible for the outcome. Often the budget at the end point as well, because they control sales and operations, but also IT, right? And understanding that, look, this is not going to be an integration play. I can't tell you how many calls I'm on after 10 years where they're still asking me, can you do a real-time API into this? That's not the point, right? The point is, can I get the data and map the data to a system to get the output that I want that has financial consequences? So everybody along that information value chain has to be involved. Everyone else can be learning the tool, can be asking good questions about it, can be improving the processes, but they really are responsible for quick wins. Like they have to look at the tools, say, yeah, I cut some costs here, or yeah, I was able to move some stuff from here to there. And now that I understand how the AI works, I can do it for 80,000 items instead of the 80 items that I'm doing daily, right, or weekly. So that's what I've seen in terms of who needs to be involved. Family-owned businesses tend to do better because they control that end-to-end information and physical value chain, right? And the more fragmented the company is, the more of a game of a hot potato that becomes, right? It's like, well, it's not our problem. Let's keep pushing it down to the end customer. Ultimately, what I found is either the taxpayer or the consumer is paying for those dollars, and ultimately they say no, right? When it just doesn't, the price doesn't make any sense anymore. So that's been my 2 cents for the last 10 years.
That is very interesting. Subhash, do you have any comments?
No. I mean, it goes back to that what Randy and Ollie said, is that there's a lot of stuff that can be done that AI can do that was not possible before. Okay, it's not theoretical anymore. It's not visionary. It is not hallucinations and marketing anymore. I think there's some real substance behind it, and there's a lot of actual stuff that happens. You mentioned Amazon, just to give you an example, right? Just think about what actually happens in the real world. You don't touch the product. You don't do anything. Everything is done digitally till that product arrives at your doorstep. Just think about that, right? You don't touch the product. You don't know everything you did on the computer till the item physically arrives at your doorstep. That is all digital. That's a great example of an information supply chain with good data. Just imagine if it was bad data, how many people would be mad, right? It works. So it's not that, can it be improved? Of course it can be improved, right? I'm not saying it cannot be improved. But to Randy's point, the information technology is going through major change. That whole stack is going to get replaced. Fighting and screaming, they will get replaced one time, maybe 5 years, 10 years, 2 years, I don't know, right? So that will happen. And then the money part that pays for all of this, at some point, you can't just write blank checks. Nowadays the numbers have gone into 500 billion in investments and all that. That doesn't happen without board approval, without a plan, a way to recoup the money. So there's a lot of investments going into this. So the shift is no more on the physical, trying to do the stuff that you have to do daily. That will get commoditized, right? Because it's easy to commoditize. You go nickel and dime the thing every day, right? But the bad decisions, right, are made at the financial supply chain level, at boards and executive levels, which nobody is holding them accountable for, right? That's the thing I would shift the focus onto, is don't nickel and dime the stuff, but look at where the bad decisions are being made into the next 5 years, right? And so the big elephant in the room is, at some point you have to consider in your budgets, because investments happen because what you're authorized in budgets, whether you like it or not, that's how it works, right? This is budget season. So whatever you're doing has to percolate into an acceptable decision that is basically how you will be judged for the next 12 months, right? So investments go back into that. So whatever you're doing, whether it's AI, inventory, whatever, and I just add one thing, is that what does a CEO get his performance measured on? Growth and margin, right? You don't give me those two numbers, you're fired. Okay. You can skate by increasing the the stock price. You get away. That you can do for 1 or 2 years. Look what happened to the Nestle CEO, got fired. Okay. So you can do some of these things, but you can't hold them off for long. If you don't have growth, you don't have margin. And guess when these things are decided and approved by the board? During budget time, right? So this is when you're casting whatever your plans for the next 12 months right now. So do it wisely, do it knowledge wise versus feelings, right? Or emotions. So that's the part that if we can use AI to provide the financial facts, so that the executives can make the right decisions, so the right technologies are put in place and not just thrown away, right? Then we can have operating supply chains that deliver to that outcome. So, but this is my 2 cents in summarizing what I heard from Randy and Ali. Was very critical time for us. There's another wrinkle in this, is tariffs. You can't escape that, right? Everybody's got to figure out the impact of tariffs, because in a global supply chain, there's a ripple effect. It affects you. I mean, in one way or the other, you will be affected. So you have to know, and a tariff is a financial problem. It's not a supply chain problem. So how do you do that? This is the time to figure it out. You got 2 months, 3 months max to figure this out. Otherwise, you go back to your old ways of doing things and expect different results. Okay, that's not a wise thing to do.
So we actually have a lot of questions and comments in our LinkedIn that are relevant to this. Let me maybe pose one to the panel here. Do you see AI as a means to enable us to make decisions faster, or are we moving towards dependency on AI to make the decisions for us?
That's philosophical. Who wants to take that?
I'll take a stab at it. Again, I keep on harping about data, but if you got good data, you can get good information and you can get good insights and you can make good decisions. And the faster, the better. In fact, that's where right now there's the tradition has been for businesses, and I'm sure it's continuing for most businesses. They have these monthly, quarterly, weekly, sometimes daily meetings versus I'm a decision maker. I want my information now. You should have it on demand. It doesn't need to be all real time. What decision are you trying to make? If all you're trying to do is make a global dashboard or a digital twin, it's not going to what you want, no matter how fast it is.
Just to build on that, it depends from culture to culture, country to country. But in some cases, you see extremes of no data, all feeling, and then all data, no feeling, right? So it just depends on where you are in the world. Like I said, what I could have done 10, 15 years ago with AI today would be run more geo markets, right? Have a good control on lead times to understand when stuff is coming in, understand usage at the endpoint. So like instead of running 2 countries, maybe you could run 20, right? So just at that decision-making level, if you have good data, and 95% of the time you don't have good data, right? But you need to be able to input it into a system to realize what you need to improve and get the silos that are feeding that bad data in to start cleaning it up. This has been my experience working with some of the largest organizations in the world, that most people are just stuck and they're just like, oh, until we don't clean the data, we can't do shit. Our systems basically say, let's get what you have, make the decisions that you can have, because all feeling decisions are worse than some data decisions, right? And this is a big bottleneck human constraint that you have to basically overcome with a lot of management, to say, you can't be running stuff like it's the Vanderbilt era still, right? That's where some of them are still stuck. You have to show them that there is an impact to operating ratio and margins and other things. But yeah, hard to answer that philosophical question today. But for today, even just using analytics is better than what a lot of industrial companies are doing in the US.
So we're speaking about informational uncertainty, and there will always be informational uncertainty. You're never going to have perfect data about everything in the world, regardless of what you do. At the same time, Randy, you brought up the quarterly, monthly business review meetings that typically work with rare view data, as in someone collects it and then there's a month. It's old data. Subhash, most decisions in supply chain are forward-looking. You work with the best available data that you can have. How about, what are you seeing in the financial part of the organizations?
You're asking me? Okay.
Yes.
So here's the thing. I'm going to be, people are going to be shaking their heads on this. When you sit in an operations meeting, think about how much time is spent discussing whatever they're talking about based on 90 days old data. Well, you as a supply chain guy is sitting there and going, I'm thinking about tomorrow, day after, next week, next month, next 12 months. And and this is repeated, like Randy said, site, country, region, global, same process, looking at data that is 90 days old. Why? Just think of how much of wasted time and how bad decisions are made. So what if we look forward, and this is what I talk about CPOs and all those guys who want a seat at the table. This is your opportunity to steer the conversation towards what should be than discussing what was.
Yeah.
Just think about it. Just what would you prefer? And then have, whether you're at a site or a factory, country, region, you're all looking at the same data and not like, well, I don't know what finance has got. I don't know what logistics people have. I don't know what procurement has. I don't know what these forecast people are doing. And instead of that discussion, it is like, what are we going to do to meet what should be, which is the outcome that we decided for this week or this month? I understand a lot of people have difficulty with week, and I go, no, we can't do that. That you're asking too much. Okay, fine, 1 month. Okay, next month, what are we going to do, right? And what does a C-suite help in making that happen versus discussing what happened 90 days ago? Just think about it. How much productivity can you gain by doing that one simple thing, right?
Yeah.
So that's what I suggest, is that it's a very, just a small shift based on facts. So if you can do that, your entire enterprise will be looking forward, meeting your objectives, rather than answers and blames and all what happened 90 days ago. That's what I find frustrating in operations meeting is, why am I here sitting listening to this for 45 minutes and I only got 15 minutes and that's my blame time? Who's going to get blamed in those 15 minutes, right? So let's make better operations meetings, improve all over the world.
Mine used to be 2 hours. I don't know how you got away with 45 minutes, but
because I couldn't stand it for the other 1 hour. I'm
Yeah.
I'm out of here. I got a fire to put out. Please.
I would go to lunch in the middle, put up mute my phone, go get lunch, and
It doesn't matter whether you're in General
point, right?
Motors.
A lot of these CPOs, chief
sorry.
supply chain officers, they're talking about what's going to show up 120 days and what's going to be consumed, rather than, oh, how much did we save on X time? Now we have an inventory swing, right? But just to build to Subhash's point, that is
I mean,
probably the issue right now with
this
inventory.
happens.
Back to you,
It
Anzu.
happens at the highest levels in the auto industry, high-tech industry, all over the world. I mean, it's just the same scene repeats. And nowadays, who has the time to sit through 2-hour meetings, right? Especially if you're in supply chains. Sorry.
We have some more questions. One for Randy. Randy, as an analyst, how do you see the vendor landscape right now between traditional supply chain players who have been around for 2 decades and some new vendors who are solving new age problems?
Well, I think I'm just looking at what works. I think we got a lot of isolated pockets where it's succeeding with small startups. I mentioned computer vision AI, especially. We've got the autonomous agents, and agents are coming out. We'll see where that goes, but that's, to me, at least right now, it's more of a work. You're really comparing employees' productivity to agents' productivity. Decision intelligence, I guess it's official area. That area is pretty broad, focusing to me more on process. And this is what I like about Ali and Sahish's solutions. They're focused on decisions right now, on demand. You can bring up and ask questions of it now when you need to make a decision. They're not necessarily real time, but they've got the facts and the information for you to identify choke points, issues, and what you can do about it.
Adding on to that, we have another question that's quite related. The supply chain space is inundated with legacy players who bring complex products that are not relevant largely in today's VUCA world. That's volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. How do you recommend operations teams and chief supply chain officers to evaluate new players who are disrupting the space?
Well, one of the reasons I've been traditionally a CIO, IT lead, IT designer, solutions, and one of the reasons I started being went independent and analyst was I've been competing against venture capitalist funded startups in supply chain all my adult life, and they usually come in two. The one that's a lot of money on it is, I call it a digital hub, like real time transportation visibility, and I was providing visibility to my customers, and I basically just waited for them to run out of money, and it's like a up and down. You got a big vendor throw $100 million at it, everybody gets on, and then it dies, and a new better one comes up, and you get some cheap services for a little while, but then it goes away, and so there are some good vendors out there that are doing what they do today. I mean, enterprise systems, WMS, inventory management, they're doing what they're supposed to do, transactional management. But we need more innovation to get that data and actually do something with it. And that's what AI needs, is good data so it can give good, fast insights and improve productivity.
Yep. Just to add to that, my answer to that often is, and of course, I had pretty much every tool like you did at a time, and maybe Subhash and Randy in house, right? That we had access to. But my question always comes down to, if these things are working over the last 40 years, why are the planes down? Why are the trains down? Why are the pumps not working? Why are we losing sales? Why are we losing money? And for 40, 50 years, there's always been a silver bullet, and I haven't seen it. So why not just focus on where we have some clean data and achieve what we're required to do from a P&L and operations perspective, then bet the farm on the next group of people who just learn math or statistics, right? That's ultimately what a lot of AI is today, just a lot of advanced calculus and math. But back to you, Anzur.
Subhash, maybe this question is very relevant for you. Supply chain finance and tariffs seem like a timely need right now. Can you elaborate on some use cases related to inventory and how your customers are leveraging these solutions?
Okay. So, oh yeah. So it comes back to that inventory that I said, right? In a supply chain, there's like three things that happen, right? You plan for things, and then the demand is there on which you don't control, and then you keep adjusting for it, right? So it's a net. That's all you do in a supply chain. Idea is that you don't hold inventory was the goal previously, or you didn't pay for it. Let me put it that way. How we solved that problem of not holding inventory was we didn't show it on our books. We made the supplier hold it till I actually sold it. Okay, so these are financial engineering techniques, right? So having said that, this is a critical problem. Is all these decisions are made way in advance of the actual thing that happens after the fact, right? What should you buy? What price should you buy? and and where do you need it, when you need it, is done by various people, forecasting, right? So one very important thing that people lose sight of is if you kind of allow average thinking and agree with averages, let's take an average, let's take this, then you end up with an average enterprise. I'll just give you a simple math, since Ali mentioned everything is math in AI, right? If you're operating with an 85% accurate forecast, with an 85% accurate plan, and an 85% accurate fulfillment, your entire enterprise is operating at 61%. Like it or not, that's what it is, right? So this is because you're condoning average thinking with average stuff, and this is what's been going on, right? So how do you fix it? There is ways to fix it. It's just that you got to change how that is done. Last point I'll add to that is there's a lot of talk about data, obviously, that obvious one. Culture issues, right? We talk about, don't try to say change culture. That doesn't work. Okay. That is a lifelong investment. What you do is make things easy for the person doing the work, right? Make it easier for that individual. I mean, this is like the very basic fundamental thing when we designed the smartphone, right? We're competing with IBM, which was the biggest gorilla in town, right? Here's a company talking about something nobody's seen, nobody's heard about, and we said, that will change the entire world, and the other one will disappear in the cloud. So what does that mean, right? What that means is you put the power of what the individual wants. That's what the I in the I products that you now are very familiar with. Was what the individual needs, you take care of that first, everything else falls in place, right? So same thing in supply chains. Take care of the individual doing whatever task he's doing, right? Make that 80% more efficient, everything else falls in place, right? So that's what the approach is. Use all these things that we talked about, make that happen. And we didn't change anybody's culture to use the iPhone. Nobody was taught. There was no training. There's no nothing. You bought it. You stood in line to buy it, right? So nobody went and said, this is good for you. No, it just people came because it did something that the individual wanted first. Then came all the other stuff. And look, and not that we actually thought about all these other world domination stuff. It was simply survival at the time when we designed it, right? So that's what I'm talking about is, so you have to understand what is required in supply chains is an individual doing their work, whatever they're doing, whether I'm in finance, inventory, or in moving stuff, trucking. I have to do that the best way I'm supposed to. I'm supposed to swim my lane. I'm not going to suddenly decide, well, this would be a better forecast, I think we should ship more. No, that's not your decision. You just ship what you're told to ship, right? So that's how it works. So AI has to understand that what is the work structure, which means that AI, when it's implemented, either you take work away from me or you're adding work to me. If you're going to add work, the guy is going to say, get out of here, right? If you take work away from me and say, oh, you're going to take care of it, I hate doing that, I don't want to update that spreadsheet, and you're going to take care of it, please feel free. This goes to that previous question you had about where we're going with AI. We're going to go with digital employees. Jensen talked about it, how we're going to get to digital employees. Because when you do the work, you have to be also responsible and accountable. That doesn't get passed on, right? So you can't say, I'll do the work, but I won't take responsibility and accountability, right? And you can't have somebody delegate work if he's still going to be responsible, right? Very fundamental issues. So that's what I'm saying is all that is taken into account when you're designing these AI systems, right? It's possible to do it. I mean, we're not talking imaginary stuff. Automatic braking existed, Siri existed, knowledge navigator existed since 1988 or 89, right? We still haven't accomplished half of it, right? Anyway, so that's my 2 cents on that. Maybe 5 cents.
Randy, maybe this question is directed to you. In order to respond effectively, you need to prepare for it. It is a planned inventory relative to the demand and to the level of possible fluctuations. How do you see the inventory challenges and gaps in the market with current solutions? I believe you talked about some of the existing supply chain planning solutions.
I think the best way to address that is inventory management. They're working in a functional silo, and so they're making decisions within that. You got the transporters; they're making decisions about
Yes.
getting on time delivery, but they don't know what's in the box. And both inbound and outbound, and you got the finance working in a silo, and they're not sharing information. So inventory management by itself is great. It's getting better, but we need more cross-functional, I call it multi-hop reasoning, where you get everything, don't have unintended consequences, because the inventory guys, or the procurement guys make a great decision. We're going to buy 200,000 widgets at this low price, and then what are the inventory management guys doing? They're scratching their head. So
perhaps what we can get into now is we've talked about all the possibilities and what we've actually seen. For most organizations out there, what's the best way to get started with what they have, existing tools, existing data? What's the best place to start? How about we, delve into some of the use cases, like very specific use cases? Subhash, would you like to get in on the tariff and CFO level approved data?
Sure. So this was, you mentioned a lot of things about, how companies get funded, people get selected, there are existing players and all that stuff. So I come from an innovation perspective. Okay. To me, I look at a problem and go, all that is bad, it should be replaced, right? That's the starting way of thinking. And that's how innovation works, right? To me, it's not like taking something that exists and make it better. That doesn't, if you were, an Apple and you suggested something like that, you would most probably get fired. Okay. It's like, oh, we can do this like Microsoft or like IBM, and it's like, get out of here, go work there, right? So that would be the kind of mindset. So the thing is, what can you do that is different and much better? So that's the goal. So in a company, so when we build a product, we said, okay, if we build something that we think is that innovative, let's get the number one company in that world, which prides itself in that, and they're able to pick us and replace their system. So this is the kind of mindset, right? So when we first built the first five chains, Dell was there, right? So what's the business requirement at Dell at that time? They wanted to move from a $30 billion company to a $60 billion company. That was Michael Dell's mission goal. Remember I said growth, margin. This is how CEOs get their performance and what their objectives are. So how do you do that with existing systems? They have all, they're the best in the business, everything. They got all the access to everything. How do you do it? So the question comes back as, well, our internal system, that was the crown jewels of what the secret sauce, was not able to support that. Just going from where they are to suddenly double the revenue requires a whole scaling of the supply chain. How do you do it? Well, existing systems can do it. What do you do? So they opened it up to the entire industry and said, who's got what will address this? To cut to the end point, we were selected. Why? Because we were able to demonstrate to them, right? Everything, all the kind of things that I said today. I don't want your legacy data. They're like, what do you mean? You wrote about data warehousing. What do you mean you won't build a data warehouse? I don't want it, right? So it's kind of shocking when you think about it, and they go, oh, but then you think about Dell's mindset. I just saved $20 million. Okay, my QBR looks really good because I saved Dell $20 million not building a data warehouse, right? But achieving something which was not done before in the industry is what should be versus catching up on what was, which means that all existing systems were designed based on what was and accounting AR, AP based are not able to address what you want to do for the next $30 billion you want to grow. Next comes the question, how long will it take to do it? Typical 3 to 4 or 5 years. We said, how about 3 months? It's shocking, right? Hey, we've never done that. Are you crazy? All that stuff, you know? So don't. We just show it to you, right? No, so my approach is, and this is what with AI is, show it to me. Do the work, right? And if it does the work, what are we arguing about? Right? Whether it's right or wrong is the only question. And if it's right, then what's your objection? Then comes all the other reasoning, I understand, but that happens afterwards, and companies will make the right decisions when they see it. Going to Randy's point, I'm not selling them a vision, not selling them some hallucination of something that will happen in the future. I'm saying this is what you need today, this is what you can do, and by the way, you can do it in 1/5 to 1/10 the time. So that to me is compelling, that you can compete with established players, because then you say, hey, look, is this what you want? This is what can be done. You don't want to do it, your decision. You want to do it, I'm showing you, right? So I think with AI you can do that. That is the proposition, is you don't have to buy into some vision. Will it do this for me? Yes or no? Show it, right? And you can do it incrementally. It doesn't take years to do it. Look how fast AI has come. I mean, it didn't happen in over 25 years. I mean, maybe it took there, but I'm saying implementations don't take that long. So that we've changed that whole technology stack and the business purposes because we're able to build that knowledge and process knowledge into those agents. It's not the data, because the data is bad, I told you, right? So why would I use bad data? What I have control is process and knowledge, how to do what needs to be done, and if necessary, eliminate it. So you mentioned this point about inventory. I'll give you a very simple example on that, which is burning me yesterday night. Was, okay, I got procurement making a decision. They make DSI agreements with the supplier. I got logistics that has to work on transporting stuff, right? And making sure I'm moving this much of days of supply, right? And then I got warehousing all over the places. The warehouses are managing actual days of supply inventory at those locations. All three work at three different wavelengths, at three different, completely different mindsets. So this is what the integration with Fivechains and with Throughput would be, right? You would be able to get that financial information and sync up these things electronically rather than have human beings do it, because I'll never get a TMS, a WMS, and procurement system integrated in my lifetime or any of our lifetimes, I think. It's not going to happen. So how do you do it? Just do it. Technology can do it, and do it consistently and accurately, better than any human being can. That is the point. Can it be done? It can be done. It's very easy actually to do it. We've done it. I mean, that's the whole point, right? I'm not making this up. That's a great example of it can be done at that simple level. How much inventory? You don't make promises to a supplier, just absurd promises. That share of business, all that but then in reality you do something else. You transport something else. You store something else. Why? That costs money. So we compute the cost of money to do those bad things. So that at least you're aware that this decision is costing you so many millions of dollars. Now, whether supplier pays for it, you pay for it, is a different discussion. Take that inefficiency out because it's a non-value add activity, right? So it is possible to do it. It's not complicated. Yes, it requires a little bit more, I would say, thinking but we solve those problems. Then I mentioned TAM, for example. That concept was not there when we introduced it at Dell. The power of that is you can shape demand. Think of demand shaping, right? In near real time, before the person buys the product. because of this capability. So these are things that talk about, but hard to do because you want all these systems. And what I'm saying with AI, you can do it. It's that easy to do it, and you don't have to fight the culture barriers and the system barriers, the silo barriers. We're running this in that system. All that can be and through. So that's the advantage. I'll stop with that.
Ali, your thoughts as a former ops manager in just being able to have access to those technologies? We talked about automating the boring stuff, not needing large digital transformations or digital twins, being able to do, collect all of this information together. What would you do with this information?
Yeah, I think in terms of use cases, what I found is over the last 10 years, before you need an AI agent, you need a change agent, right? And basically that starts with someone in operations finance having a spine, saying that, okay, that we've done stuff in a certain way and it's gotten us to these results, and to stay up with the industries. And, I mean, let's face it, a lot of people miss the data center boom and the AI boom just because they wouldn't change. Not to say they can't catch up, but like they had the same resources, they could have invested in it and gone after it. So back to my point, you need someone strong in operations to say, this is the outcome that I want. Someone who can go to someone that owns a P&L saying, I think this is what I can get. I need this much budget approved because the person I'm bringing in is going to be able to solve this problem. Now, the other problem, obviously, with operations is I feel like supply chain people live in their own world, which is often the back office, and they never go talk to operations. The bigger the organization, I can't tell you how many calls I'm on where supply chain says, oh, I've never talked to an end user before. It's like, well, how are you planning for inventory if you don't know what the demand is, right? And so what's actually needed, even before you get tools together, is just leadership, right? That's number one, where someone could say, these are the outcomes I expect. I read about this stuff, and whoever the vendor is, I don't care. But like, this is what we can probably get on top of what we're doing. And then obviously the next step is for me to get this end result, I need to think about what is the data or information I'm already ingesting today to make those decisions, and what are the columns that data is coming from. It can come from any system, you name it. It can be Silicon Valley-backed unicorn. It can be one of the 40, 50-year-old systems that are in existence today. Then you map it, and then you quickly find fast wins, quick wins, saying I saved $1 million, $20 million, I increased output by 5%. Yes, operations exists. Agreed that I actually fixed this, right? And then, or I increased inventory turns. You have to find something you can measure very quickly and say, this is what I'm getting at a small level. And then obviously you have to go for the big scale, right? Which is where a lot of AI companies stall, saying, okay, I did this at a factory level. How do I now scale it up for the entire world level? And from that perspective, then you have to tie into the master data globally, right? For the company and say, I did this at a small level. I proved my point. Now I need to prove the unit economics that I did locally at a global level. And then not focus on optimizing all the damn nodes, right? Because that's what these digital transformation processes do. Focus on global constraints. Say, if I fix this, then we'll get this sort of output. Like, Andrew, you back in the day helped the Panama Canal think about how they could get 13% more output, right? What they do about it, that's up to them. But like, once you start looking at those sorts of constraints and saying, this is where we need to focus versus let's throw more compute and try to optimize everything in one go that operations just can't execute on, then you get nothing at the end of it, right? You spend hundreds of millions of dollars of stuff, where I've seen personally companies that are coming back after 6 years when we spoke to them, very large blue chip companies, where they're coming back and saying everything's digitized, but we now have $3.5 billion more of inventory. Or, oh, the local vendors didn't end up copying what you could have done. So what I'm finding now is it takes some time for the maturity to set in with a lot of these companies to also think about talking to operations. But the biggest gap today, I think, is supply chain community is completely disconnected from operations and finance. They don't talk to each other. I see this in large organizations, transit, military, semiconductor, you name the industry. That is the problem to solve. They're optimizing the back office and the warehouse for safety stock, but they're not really doing the demand shaping and stuff that Subhash is talking about. So until those two groups don't come together, how are you optimizing inventory? I don't know. I'm still trying to figure that out for a lot of companies.
Great point. On that note, we are closing in on time. Last thoughts, Randy?
Well, I agree with Ali and Savish, and we need to quit, not stop being application focus and focus on our data, and that starts with executives there's a lot of things. I've got a lot of articles on that. Please read them.
Thank you. All right. I believe that's the end. Thank you everyone for joining us. If we couldn't get to any of your questions, please just, connect with us on LinkedIn or just send us an email. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks
Thanks,
for
everyone.
attending.
All right.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Bye.